Roger Williams University is hosting a crisis management seminar on May 3rd at their Providence campus. Crises, whether a natural disaster, cyber attack, or financial instability, can have severe repercussions if not handled properly. This is where crisis management plays a pivotal role. Join Roger Williams MBA students and expert speakers to learn how to prepare for the unexpected. The program is totally free and open to the public. You can register online at rwu.edu/events/crisis-management-symposium.
This is the 2022 Democratic primary debate for Rhode Island Congressional District, presented in conjunction with the Bartholomewtown podcast and sponsored by American Deerproofing. Now, here's WPRO News Director Bill Haberman.
Welcome to the WPRO debate. Bill Haberman, WPRO News. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm in for Bill Bartholomew of Bartholomewtown, Dan York's producer here. Unfortunately, Bill announced earlier this week that he came down with COVID-19, which is unfortunate. He did the hard work together. All five of our Democratic candidates who are gathered in the room. Hope he's feeling better soon and miss him. And thank him for all the hard work. He's been a great part of our radio station here, and we hope he's feeling better soon. And hopefully we'll see him again back here in the conference room coming up during the fall. Let's introduce the Democratic candidates. We have 5 Democratic candidates in the 2nd District, and we'll give 1-minute opening statements for each. Let's go around the room. We're joined. Omar is with us. He is the founder of the Refugee Dream Center. Omar, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Joy Fox, who is with us. She is the former communications director for Governor Raimondo and Congressman Langevin as well. She joins us. Joy, thank you for joining us this morning. Seth Magaziner is with us. He is in second term general treasurer here in Rhode Island. Sarah Morgenthau is with us. She has been she's worked in the Obama and the Biden administrations in a number of positions. Former state representative, Providence City Councilman David Segal is joining us as well. David, thank you for being with us. Sarah, thank you for joining us as well. So, I think everybody has agreed. We'll take a 1-minute opening statement to start things off. We'll go alphabetically. Welcome to WPRO, Omar of the Refugee Dream Center.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks, my fellow candidates. Once again, I think this is a great honor and opportunity to call myself a candidate in a democratic process in a great nation like the United States. I have that in common with these great individuals right here. What we have in difference is the fact that I stand out. I'm a person who came here 15 years ago, started from scratch, from the bottom, with nothing, and attained the American dream. And that is why I'm standing here right today. I work with people every day, people who need struggles and the needs of economic challenges that they struggle with every day. And those are the things that people in the district and across the state need in order to be represented properly in Washington.
Okay, Omar Ba. We turn to Joy Fox. 1-minute opening statement, if you could. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Like you, I care deeply about this state, and I've always been willing to roll up my sleeves to deliver results for people. This district is my home. I grew up here and traveled every inch of it working for Congressman Jim Langevin and Governor Gina Raimondo. If we want to change Washington, I believe we need to change the kind of people we send there. Not more people with trust funds or those who have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on their campaigns or lent hundreds of thousands of dollars to their campaigns. It's also time to send the first Democratic woman to Congress from Rhode Island. And I know we also need to keep this seat blue. I'm the only one around this table that has been on a team that has beaten Alan Fung twice, and I know we can do it again. There's a lot at stake right now, and we have to help our families make ends meet. I look forward to discussing housing, healthcare, education, and so much more today in a lively discussion with my colleagues here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Fox. Thanks for coming in. Treasurer Seth Magaziner, thanks for coming in, Seth.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who's listening for caring about our state and our country. I am a new dad, and I want my 10-month-old son to grow up in a world that is safe and fair and sustainable and full of opportunity for everyone. And the stakes in this election are incredibly high. We need our next member of Congress to fight to preserve Social Security and Medicare, lower health care costs for everybody, fight to protect a woman's right to choose, fight to bring more manufacturing jobs and clean energy jobs back to our state, and protect our democracy against Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd that is determined to upend our democracy. These are the same things that I fought for the last 8 years as your state treasurer. As state treasurer, I led a historic once-in-a-generation school construction program that has improved school buildings all across the state. I fought for higher wages, for lower health care costs. I worked alongside many others to pass a law to protect the right to choose in Rhode Island, and I look forward to bringing those same priorities and those same values to Washington.
Thank you, Treasurer. Turn to Sarah Morgenthau. Sarah, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to the viewers for tuning in today. There is too much at stake in this election: cost of living, democracy, reproductive rights, and we cannot take this seat for granted. We need to beat Alan Fung, and I'm the best candidate to do just that. I've worked for 2 presidents, Obama and Biden, and I'm the only candidate ready to do the job on day one. I worked at Homeland Security to keep our community safe from cyber attacks, from domestic terrorism, from natural disasters, which can hit hard here in the Ocean State. I reopened travel and tourism for the United States of America, which provides $7 billion for our economy. We're just over 1 million people. That's a heck of a lot of jobs and economic benefits. And I have global perspective from my time at the Peace Corps working in over 50 countries. I would be honored to be the first Democratic woman to represent Rhode Island in Congress. We don't need another career politician. We need a fresh perspective. We're facing tough times. We need to stop the noise, stop the fighting, and let's get to work.
Ms. Morgenthau, thanks for joining us this morning. Final opening statement for former State Representative David Segal.
And thanks very much for having me. Thank you for listening. I'm running for Congress because people are frustrated, and I am frustrated. They know the government should be able to do more for us, and that the impediments to progress on the issues of the day are corporate special interests and political corruption, and whether we're talking about affordability or a transition to renewable energy or access to fundamental rights like choice and otherwise. And over the course of the last 20 years as a local lawmaker and a state lawmaker and a national advocate, I've learned how to build coalitions that are broad enough that we can overcome these impediments and make progress on the issues of the day. Starting as part of a movement for fair wages when I ran for office 20 years ago and overcame an entrenched old Ward machine, to pushing renewable energy measures at the State House, to helping to revive the anti-monopoly movement at the federal level over recent years and protect consumers and workers and small businesses. And unless we change those systems, we will not be able to make progress, and that's why I'm running for Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Segal. Thank you for joining us. Let's get to the topics of interest to kick things off. One of the things that I've noticed, and I certainly think a lot of the primary voters here, there's a lot of agreement with this group. All 5 of the candidates debate earlier this week that was on television. There'll be another one tonight. And I guess that's to be expected. Everyone is a Democrat in here, and there's certainly a lot of commonality. But I'm going to give each candidate a chance to say why I should be the nominee as opposed to the other 4 good people in this room. What makes me stand out? Why should I get the Democratic primary vote coming up a little bit later this month? I'm going to start, Mr. Ba, with you. Why should you specifically be the nominee as opposed to the other 4 people here?
Well, thank you so much once again. As I indicated in the beginning, this group here, everybody says similar things, and where we stand out is how we are different. I'm running to defend democracy, to help protect the American dream, which I'm a product of, but also for the future of this country, the future of the children, and the future of a democracy that has endured for 250 years that is under threat right now. It needs somebody who understands these issues, what it takes, the mettle it takes to fight and defend democracy against those who are seeking to destroy it. But January 6th happened because there was so much complacency. People did not understand the intricacies of the threats that happened, and what is the chance that if we send one of these people to Congress, they will not be doing the same business as usual because they are not different from those who are there, and then January 6th or something worse could happen. I'm doing this for the future of my children because I don't want them to live in a country where democracy falls. I've lived in a country where democracy fell, and I knew what happened next. It was dictatorship, killings, torture. I became a journalist to fight and defend democracy, stand up to dictatorship, a warlord, and the result, my reward was imprisonment, torture, and I fled into exile. This country gave me home and hope and opportunities. I came here without anything, with no family, no community, nothing. I started from scratch. And the democracy and the freedom and the air that I enjoyed here is what made me stand here today. Within 15 years, I've built systems that helps people to live the American and attain the American dream. Housing, healthcare, education, early childhood education, mentoring hundreds of young people. Everybody advocates for these things, but doing it in person is what I do every day.
I guess, Mr. Segal, what makes you stand out among these four?
And so you're
5, excuse me.
So you're absolutely right. There are a lot of similarities. There are some important differences between us. But the question is if we agree on all these issues, or many issues, and even moreover, there's widespread agreement on many issues of the day. When we account for independents and even Republicans, the question is why we don't get things done. And my campaign is focused on the barriers to getting things done, on corporate special interests influence, and on systemic corruption in Washington. And my time in elected office began working on such themes as well, organizing in support of fairer wages that were opposed by bigger businesses, and pushed through during my time in the Assembly, where I helped try to blunt the worst aspects of the response to the financial crisis, and to work over more recent years to revive the anti-monopoly movement and guard consumers and workers and small businesses about the power that we've afforded these massive international corporations, and also pushing back against revolving door corruption in Washington. And this is why I'm endorsed by Elizabeth Warren, for instance, work I've done with her to try to ensure that we have people in place and the regulatory agencies who care about the public interest and not just doing the bidding of the corporations they're supposed to regulate. And it's why I've been endorsed by the group Bernie Sanders started, Our Revolution, for instance. If we don't address these systemic issues, no matter what we believe on the other issues of the day, we're not going to get them done.
Sarah Morgenthau, what makes you stand out among this group seeking the nomination?
Look, when I go from...
Just get a little bit closer to the microphone.
When I go from community to community, what I'm hearing is everything is too darn expensive. Seniors, veterans who are living on fixed income are really worried that they're not going to be able to make ends meet. Reproductive rights. We just had Roe v. Wade overturned. I think about the fact that my daughter has less rights than I did when I was her age. Democracy is on the line. We need someone with a proven track record of getting results on day one. I have that experience. I've served 2 presidents. I was in the Obama administration at Homeland Security, working on cybersecurity, working on domestic terrorism. I had the highest level security clearances in all of these jobs, something that's really important and that we're seeing play out with the situation in Mar-a-Lago. I was at travel and tourism, reopening that during the pandemic, working with both private sector, with the government, trying to come up with solutions so that we could open up a sector that was disproportionately impacted. That's $7 billion coming into the economy in Rhode Island, a heck of a lot of jobs and a heck of a lot of economic benefits. And I have the global perspective of working around the world at the Peace Corps on health security issues, on food insecurity issues. I was there when we evacuated the volunteers from Crimea because Russia invaded, something that we're thinking about today. So I believe that we need someone with a proven track record who has the relationships and has the experience and can get things done for folks here. Too much is at stake.
Treasurer Magaziner?
There are 3 things that set our campaign apart. I am best able to represent the concerns of the people of District 2 in Congress. I have a track record of passing big legislation and getting things done, and we have built a campaign that can win in November and keep the seat Democratic. So on the first point, I've spent the last 8 years as state treasurer working in communities all across the state with people to solve problems and get things done. I advocated with the nurses and the families at Zambrano Hospital in Burrillville to keep that facility open. I worked in Westerly on flooding mitigation to protect against sea level rise. I've worked in West Warwick and Warwick to help taxpayers save money on municipal energy bills. So I know the issues of the district. I know the issues that communities are facing because I've spent the last 8 years doing deep work in every community across the 2nd Congressional District. And not only have I spent time listening to people's concerns, we've built a track record of getting big things done. I led a historic once-in-a-generation school construction program that is building new elementary schools in Cranston and Johnston. I wrote legislation that created clean energy financing programs that have put 3,000 people to work on clean energy projects all across the state. We made Rhode Island just the fourth state in the country to divest from manufacturers of assault weapons. So we have a track record in the Treasurer's Office of getting big things done, and I can bring that same results-oriented approach to Congress. Finally, we have built a campaign that can keep this seat in Democratic control. Make no mistake about it. The National Republicans are getting ready to pour a ton of dark money into this race to boost their candidate, Alan Fung, who on the night that Liz Cheney lost her election in Wyoming was in Wyoming himself with Kevin McCarthy and the MAGA Republicans toasting her defeat. We have built a campaign that can win. I won the district in both of my races for state treasurer. We have built a broad coalition that includes the support of organizations like the National Organization for Women, the League of Conservation Voters, more than 20 different labor unions that represent working people, and we will win in November and keep this seat in the Democratic column.
And finally, Joy Fox.
Thank you.
How do you stand out? Why should you be, as opposed, again, to your four rivals here in the room, the nominee?
Yeah, thank you. I have deep roots in this community, and with that comes deep understanding on how to deliver results. I grew up in Cranston. I live in Warwick now. I started my career as a reporter at the Cranston Herald. I worked for the ACI, for Congressman Langevin, and for Gina Raimondo. And as part of those three teams working for the Department of Corrections, the ACI, the Congressman, and the Governor, I have a deep experience on building teams that can move an agenda forward on the things that we need done around education, workforce development, healthcare. My time in the governor's office was marked with the passage, finally, of universal kindergarten and tremendous workforce development programs that are still putting people to work in Rhode Island now. And when I worked for the congressman, we worked on two issues in particular in a bipartisan way, lifting up family caregivers, making sure they had access to supports to keep their loved ones at home, and on the other end of the spectrum, cybersecurity. At the time when we started working for the congressman, everyone laughed at us and said cyber would never be a thing. And sure enough, not only do we know it's a huge economic development and job creator, but it's also a matter of national security. And getting back to caregivers again, that's also a personal issue for me. My dad has Alzheimer's. My mom is his primary caregiver. I know we're not alone in trying to keep our loved ones at home, and we would be absolutely lost without the Cranston Senior Center and the adult day program there. That provides my dad a change of scenery, but it also provides my mom tremendous respite. More families need that here in Rhode Island. The other part of my experience working in the governor's office is, like I said, there's the agenda, and then there's the stuff that happens. In this case right now, we know the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. We know gun violence is out of control, and we know voting rights are under threat. So I have experience working on both keeping an agenda forward and dealing with the stuff that just happens and comes up.
Okay.
I also think that we do need to send the first Democratic woman to Rhode Island, to Congress from Rhode Island, sorry. And I'm the only one who's been a part of a team that's beaten Alan Fung twice. And I would also say all of that experience amounts to a heck of a lot more than just 8 years in office. And both of those races were won on the coattails of Governor Raimondo when we were beating Alan Fung.
Let's continue on the discussion. Next topic here. The one topic that has been an issue of controversy is residency. This came up in the debate the other night on Channel 12. I believe there's a commercial that's making the rounds now. Let me put the question to you, but turn it around a little bit. Isn't the issue that you raise about the residency, primarily in regard to the treasurer, sorry about that, kind of a false issue? You don't have to live in the district. You just have to live in Rhode Island. We've had other congressmen prior to Congressman Langevin who were from other parts of the state and subsequently moved to the district. I mean, in some parts, it's Rhode Island. It's the smallest state in the country. We all know each other. Isn't it kind of a false issue that you raise?
No, it's not a false issue. I think while it is perfectly legal to live wherever you want to run for this seat, I think the difference here is deep roots in the community and not just having worked here for 8 years. I have spent my entire life and my entire career working to make a difference here. In addition to knowing the issues, I know who to turn to in the community to talk to about how we move things forward, to bring people from the community, my neighbors, my friends and family, around a table to move issues forward. I am not an insider here. I didn't just move into this race to hold political power and decide to stay in office. I am here running to serve my neighbors, and that, I think, is the defining difference here.
I'm going to put it to you, obviously, Treasurer. It's come up before and it's come up again. You've only recently moved to the district here. Answer the question. Not a resident of the district, moved in at the last moment here. Put the question to you, obviously, and there's also the issue came up as well. Went from the governor's race to the congressional race.
Look, I'm a born and raised Rhode Islander, and I have spent the last 8 years serving the 2nd Congressional District, and I know every inch of the district and every community in the district because I've spent time working with people collaboratively to solve problems, to build schools, to build clean energy projects, to divest from assault weapons, to strengthen retirement security, and to advocate for higher wages and lower health care costs and the right of women to make their own health care decisions free of interference. So I have spent time in every corner of the 2nd Congressional District. I know it well. And, I moved back to the district because I made a commitment that I would do that. And when I'm out talking to voters, this does not come up. What does come up is they are worried that if the Republicans take control of Congress, they're going to privatize Social Security. They're going to cut Medicare. They're going to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They're going to pass a national abortion ban. Those are the issues that Rhode Islanders are focused on, and that's what I'm focused on as well.
Gotcha. This is an issue as well. Ms. Morgenthau, for you as well. Recently became a full-time resident. Obviously, you have ties to the state, but only recently became a full-time resident. I think I found a story in the New York Times that this is tricky for you as well. Your thoughts about residency. You can understand how people would say, okay, as a visitor, how people could say, you haven't been here a long time. What is your response to that?
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. This has been my home for 40 years. My mother ran for this seat in 1988, this exact same seat. She was an immigrant to this country. This is truly where my heart is. I have deep roots in the community. I have all sorts of folks from the former Attorney General to Alan Hassenfeld and many others who have come out strongly in support of me. And while my heart is here, my experience is everywhere. But it's exactly that experience, working for 2 presidents in Washington on issues that are really important to folks here as I go from community to community, that's going to allow me on day one to get things done and to deliver real results for people here.
I'm going to put the question as well, David Segal as well. You, I believe, have run in the 1st Congressional District a number of years ago. So the same issue almost applies as you as well. The residency, is it a big deal? Does it matter? Should it not matter?
Respectfully, I think the issues are what matter most. I think that voters, of course, can take whatever factors they care to into mind when they're voting. That's a good thing about our system. I did run for Congress previously. I was a state rep at the time representing parts of District 1 and District 2 and ran on themes that are the same themes that have governed my whole career, my time in office, my time out of office. The notion that corporate special interests have too much power over a system. This was right after the financial crash, where we saw what happened when we allowed the banks to aggregate in size and bailed them out and neglected the needs of homeowners and renters and workers and cities and states and the critical services that they provide. And so I think what's key here is having people in office who understand the community, who've been deeply ingrained in the community and participants in it. And I've devoted my adult life as a lawmaker and advocate to trying to move issues forward at the city level, at the state level here in Rhode Island, and at the federal level that help everyday people. And that's what I want to do in Congress.
Gotcha. The issue of residency as well. Mr. Bob.
Well, absolutely. I wish to digress here. I've had Joy Fox use this for far too long, and it is time to address it. Personally, as somebody who was not born here, as somebody who came here as a refugee, and the only thing that I can say is to give a sense of appreciation to this nation for giving me refuge and a chance to a second life. I see that as an affront against my person. This Cranston she is talking about, there are over 5,000 voters of color who are neighbors of Joy. Those people were not born there. Most of them were not born in Cranston, in her neighborhood. Unless she wants to tell me that these people, like me and Magazina, are not qualified to represent that district, then this issue of residency should not apply. For 15 years, I've lived outside the district for only 7 months. I abandoned my home, went back to the district, rented, and recently bought a home and moved back to the district. And my children were born in this country, in this district, 10 and 12 years old, and I look at their eyes and say to them, look, I do not regret being born in the Gambia, in one of the poorest places on earth, but I admire you for being born in the freest country, in a country with opportunities that gave your dad the opportunity to get the best education, best resources, build systems that helps people every day. Translate for those, your neighbors, transport them to access resources, help them with systems to access jobs, job training, and access early childhood education. Those are the issues that we are dealing with. And it is not supposed to be about who was born in this country or who's lived somewhere all their lives. It is supposed to be about character and the potential to represent people in a proper way.
Joy, I'm going to ask you to answer that, Joy.
Yeah, thank you,
Mr.
Omar.
Boss says he feels it's an affront. I'll give you a minute to answer that.
It is not meant to be an affront. What the question was what makes you uniquely qualified to serve in this district? And in this case, I do believe that it is important to represent my community. I'm running here to represent my neighbors, all of my neighbors, Omar, and I appreciate what you're saying. And I do believe that my experience here working in the community, both in Washington, D.C., at the State House, and as a reporter, do give me a unique set of qualifications. And I look forward to continuing this conversation and working to represent everyone in the 2nd Congressional District.
Okay. Mr. Baum, I'm going to stick with you on the next one. By the way, welcome here. I know that you were not part of earlier debates, so we're glad to have you here and have you join in. I'm going to ask you about the issue. Obviously, you're the founder of the Refugee Dream Center. Let's talk about the issue of immigration, which for my entire career, there's been no consensus. It's been a national issue. It doesn't seem like we're any closer to any sort of meeting of the minds on this issue. Right now, we have one southern state busing migrants to Chicago, I guess was the story. I'm going to ask you, if the winner of this primary and elected to Congress, how are you going to make a dent in this, which has just been vexing for this country and other countries as well? How are you going to do that?
Well, I think I've had most of my colleagues talk about this. Magazine. I've talked about his grandparents coming as immigrants. I'm just trying to acknowledge the greatness and the latitude of ideas about this. Your work, Sarah and Joy. I rent out of the church headed by Joy's mom, my center. So I'm just trying to show how we all care about these issues. There are buses going to New York, Chicago every day right now. But the issue of immigration, it's something we all care about, but who can solve it as a Democrat going to Washington? It should be about people who can cross the aisle, people who can build bridges between Republicans and Democrats or conservatives and liberals, because this issue affects everybody. It is about foreign policy, it is about climate change, and it is about economics. So we cannot solve the immigration issue without looking at our foreign policy, but also domestically. Let's start with domestic issues. Over 10 million people undocumented in this country. These people have children who go to school, who work, who contribute to the economy by paying taxes, by being part of the diversity of this country, but they are considered as people who do not belong. That cannot be solved by executive orders or the whims and caprices of who is in power. It has to be a legislation. And that legislation cannot pass by one party dogma against the other, because it's not going to be possible. We must reach across the aisle, build bridges and coalitions, and be able to solve this thing by passing some legislation. And it is really something that must be done. In terms of foreign policy, we need somebody who understands these issues. In the next 30 years, if we don't solve the climate crisis and the issues of our foreign policy, how we approach it, giving money to dictators to extend crimes in their countries, massive movement of people will go from the south to the northern America and from across the world. People will cross oceans and deserts, and we will see hundreds of millions of people go to places like here. And there will be displacement of people within our country too. So the issue of immigration has a far-reaching issue than just Republican, Democrat.
I'm going to go around. Who's going to move the dial on this, David Segal? How do we move the dial on this issue?
I agree with a lot of what Omar said. it's I think obvious to all of us that immigrants who are here want to be participants in their communities. They want better lives for themselves and their families. Just as was the case for my grandparents, who came over from what was then Poland and is now Ukraine, and opened up a grocery store in Portland, Maine. And our system's obviously broken in innumerable ways, and I think it's also important to name that its very foundations are a function of sentiments held by people who did not want people like my grandparents here, or the grandparents of so many Rhode Islanders here, or great grandparents. These measures were put in place during the early part of the 20th century in response to immigration from places like Portugal and Italy and otherwise. And of course, there were measures even before that meant to exclude the Chinese community in particular. So it should be unsurprising that I don't fully endorse a system that was put in place in order to make it so that people like me wouldn't be able to come here anymore. I think we need to defend immigrants who are here. I support a path to citizenship for the undocumented. I think we need more legal pathways to citizenship. And I think we need to look at foreign policy as well, inclusive, for instance, of the trade agreements that we've put in place that have decimated economies here and also economies in other parts of the world that were put in place because lawmakers were listening to corporate special interests that would benefit from such agreements by seeing higher profits at the expense of pitting workers in multiple communities across the globe against one another in a race to the bottom. And we also need to look at making our own foreign policy less bellicose, and we also need to act quickly to address climate change, which will be one of the greatest drivers of immigration and refugees over the course of decades to come.
Mr. Magaziner, weigh in on immigration. How do we fix this system?
Well, every family in America has an origin story. And the story of my family is that my grandparents were all children of immigrants. My grandfather, Bob, was the son of Irish immigrants in Worcester, Massachusetts. My grandfather, Louis, was the son of Jewish immigrants in New York City. They both fought in World War II, grew up in the Depression. When they came home from the war, they got jobs. My grandfather, Bob, is a steel worker. Louis is a bookkeeper. And with some help from the GI Bill, were able to buy houses, start families, send their kids to college. And that was the bedrock of the American dream for many people. An American dream that's become harder for people to access. So we need to remind people that every family in this country and in this state came from somewhere. And we need to have an immigration system that provides pathways for safe, fair, and orderly legal immigration. And we need to have a path for citizenship for those who are already here. We also need to keep the seat in the Democratic column and win elections on the Democratic side. Let's not forget in this. When Donald Trump was elected president in 2016, he was elected calling for a ban on Muslims coming to this country, a ban based on religion. And Alan Fung cheered his election and celebrated his inauguration. When Trump got into office, he enacted a cruel policy of separating young children, 2-3 years old, from their parents. Many of those children still haven't been reunited with their parents. And even after that, Alan Fung voted for Donald Trump to be reelected. The cruelty of the Republican Party in Washington in the Trump era is just staggering. And so the first step to fixing our immigration system is making sure that we keep this seat in the Democratic column. I'm the only person in the race who has won a big statewide race as a candidate.
Ms. Morgenthau, the issue of immigration.
No, thanks, Bill. And, this issue is deeply personal to me, as I suspect it is to many of the viewers who are tuning in today. My mother was an immigrant to this country and fled anti-Semitic persecution from Austria. My great-grandfather, Henry Morgenthau, was a refugee from Germany. And I think it was that sensitivity that made him call out the atrocities of the Armenian genocide. But I also worked at Homeland Security during the Obama administration, and I know the importance of border security and that resources are needed to support our men and women of Border Patrol. I spent time on the southwest border. I saw it firsthand, and we need to make sure that we have safe passage into our country for those who want to come. I also know that we must ensure humane asylum and refugee protection so that we can live up to our rich history, so folks like my mother and Omar and many of the viewers that are tuning in can come in legally. And The other thing that I would say is that workforce shortage is a huge issue. We have seen that rear its ugly head, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic. And I headed up travel and tourism for the United States and saw a sector that was disproportionately impacted and that's really dealing with workforce shortage issues, as are so many other sectors across this state and across the country. And that gives me hope that maybe we can get bipartisan comprehension immigration reform passed, and I look forward to going to Congress and working on that.
Ms. Fox, the issue of immigration.
Thank you. Solving this problem is about building a stronger Rhode Island and stronger communities. We have many rich cultures here that only make our state stronger. I do believe that we need to create a pathway for people that are already here, a pathway to citizenship, and we need to reform our visa program, making sure that the systems for people to come to our country are as smooth as possible. This is something that, you're right, Bill, it's been top of mind for too many years. When I worked for Congressman Langevin, we were talking about these same things. And I would lean on my experience working for him to try and get this done, to reach across the aisle like we did with cybersecurity and family caregivers. We have to solve this problem. It is not only, I think, a matter of human rights to make sure that we have a fair and humane process for people to come to this country. But as Sarah just pointed out, it's also one of economics. We need our country is only made stronger with more voices here participating to make our community stronger.
Let's talk. We'll move on to politics right now. The first question will be, Treasurer, for you. Two-part question. We'll talk about, you've mentioned it several times, and it's clearly an issue you're focusing on, the red wave, which at least the suggestions maybe perhaps not quite as big as first thought, but certainly the Republicans have their eyes on the 2nd Congressional District. A lot of the 2nd Congressional District voted for President Trump, or former President Trump, for both times. Twofold question. First of all, do you support President Biden leading the Democratic ticket in 2024? And secondly, what are your plans to keep the seat falling from the Republicans? Because they certainly feel, certainly with Alan Fung, they have a good chance of winning this seat in the fall.
Yeah, well, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen and that we keep the seat in the Democratic column. Listen, President Biden and the Democratic leadership in Congress have had a really good couple of months. They passed the CHIPS Act, which is bringing more manufacturing jobs back to Rhode Island and to the United States. They passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which Alan Fung said he would have opposed, that will cap the cost of prescription drugs for seniors, make a historic investment in clean energy infrastructure, and transition us away from foreign energy. They passed legislation to provide better health benefits to veterans who are exposed to burn pits, and the list goes on and on. So there's no doubt that the president and the leadership in Congress are producing results. This is all in addition to the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed last fall, which is going to be a tremendous economic boost for Rhode Island. So listen, President Biden has had a very good couple of months. His approval ratings are ticking up. I think if he keeps this up, he's going to win a strong re-election, and he'll have the support of most Americans, including me. As far as how we hold this seat, listen, we need to advance the strongest possible Democratic campaign from this primary, and we have built a campaign that can beat Alan Fung and keep the seat blue in November. I'm the only candidate in the race who has won a big statewide race. We won the 2nd Congressional District in both my races for state treasurer, outrunning the top of the ticket. Last time we won the 2nd Congressional District with more than 60% of the vote. We have built a coalition that includes labor unions, the National Organization for Women, the League of Conservation Voters. Our campaign has been endorsed by Congressman Langevin because, in his judgment, as somebody who has won the district 11 times, our campaign is the one that is best suited to keeping the seat blue in November. But the way that we win ultimately is by talking about the issues that voters care about the most: lowering the cost of health care, protecting Social Security and Medicare, protecting the right to choose. Stay focused on what matters to people, not what matters to pundits. That's how we're going to win.
Put the question out of Ms. Morgenthau. Certainly, the Treasurer is setting himself up as the one that can win in November, put the question to you.
Yes.
The district. And again, if I could get you a little closer to the microphone. I know it's comfortable to lean back.
Yeah. So look, I hear that. I think the first thing that I want to say is I am the woman of experience, and I know where I stand on the issues. A couple of weeks ago, I was the only one that said that I would support President Biden. It's on the front page of the Providence Journal. Others, I think, were waffling because numbers were a little bit lower. As folks have mentioned, the president had a terrific run in the last few weeks, and so his numbers are going up. It becomes easy, I think, then to support. Similarly, the other night, I mentioned that I was the only one regarding the Supreme Court and court packing, which means putting additional justices beyond the 9 on whether that would be a good idea, given what we have seen with Trump putting people on that have overturned Roe v. Wade. And I was the only one who said several weeks ago that I was against that. I know where I am on the issues, and that's because I've had the experience. And I will draw the greatest contrast with Alan Fung in November. I have worked for 2 administrations. I have worked for President Biden, for President Obama. I have worked on Homeland Security, cybersecurity, something we are knowing really well today, the risk of those cyber attacks and coming into our systems, taking down our critical infrastructure. I've worked on domestic terrorism, another issue that we are seeing really blow up in a big way. I've worked closely with law enforcement, and so really know sort of all sides of the issues. I am pleased that a number of national security folks have come out in support of me, including the Steady State, which is a bipartisan group of national security, former intelligence, and foreign policy officials. And I think that goes to my experience and the ability to work on all sides of the issues. We need to beat Alan Fung in November. I draw the greatest contrast. We don't need another career politician. We need a fresh perspective. We need a woman's perspective. We need a mother's perspective. And we need someone who on day one can deliver for folks here.
Former Representative Segal, I'll ask you, some people have suggested perhaps you're too progressive for this district, noting, where it's voted in 2016 and 20. Are you too progressive to do that? And also the issue as well, should President Biden lead the ticket in 2024?
I'll take the second question first. I think the most important thing is that we put up somebody who's in a position to be the strongest candidate against whoever the other side puts up, whether it's Trump or Ron DeSantis or somebody else. And so I think that's the lens through which most Democrats are assessing this. And I think that's why they come to the same conclusion that I do, that it's a little bit too early to say right now. I think that there have been good things moving forward over the course of the last 6 weeks or so, which have been named here. And I think the more that President Biden and the party in general demonstrates that it cares about the concerns of everyday people around affordability, around debt relief, and otherwise, the better that bodes for whoever the nominee is who emerges from this primary, and for Democrats more generally across the country, and for our chances in 2024. As to my own record, I am a progressive, and I'm proud of my work as a progressive. I am also a populist and somebody who has spent a lot of time working with people who don't agree with me on every last thing. And that goes back to time in the Assembly, for instance, working on transparency measures, or working with more establishment or traditional Democrats and even Republicans to push back against budget cuts during the financial crash. And it involves more recent work at the federal level that I've done around reviving the anti-monopoly movement, pushing back against systemic corruption in our government. We've seen bipartisan votes around questions like, should we break up big tech? Should we install regulators at the Department of Justice or the Federal Trade Commission who are willing to push back against monopolies across a variety of different markets, making it so hard for workers and consumers and smaller businesses to get by? And my organization's worked on other issues where there's also a lot of cross-partisan support, and my work was dispositive of the sunset of the Patriot Act provisions that led to the collection of all Americans' telephone data. I've helped revive Congress's understanding of its own conceptions of its authority over when we go to war and don't go to war, and push back against disastrous military conflicts. And there's broad bipartisan support for ending the forever wars, which is something that I've helped advance at the federal level.
Going to turn to Mr. Baugh as well. The issue again of the seat remaining either Democrat or Republican, and the same question as well. Do you support President Biden leading the party in 2024?
Well, absolutely. I've come to value democracy in this country, so I think that should be decided by voters or by the party primaries, if such primaries do happen. So I wish to digress on that until there are primaries or somebody challenges him or otherwise. But the issue of Alan Fong, I think Alan represents a broader perspective. Let's look at the brief history here. This guy is a Democrat. He's not a Republican. We all know that. 20 years ago, Alan abandoned the Democratic Party because of the behavior and the paternalistic nature of the Democratic Party in Cranston. And he abandoned them because they did not let him contest. They told him he did not belong or he was not supposed to participate. And is that all too familiar? And he abandoned them, went to the Republican Party, and today he is their leading contender to likely take this seat if we send one of these people to the general elections. What I'm trying to say is that if Alan goes to the general elections against any of these folks, the people who look like him, the people who feel the experience that he went through, are likely to vote for him, even if they are Democratic registered. The only person who can keep those people to vote Democrat or to vote for people who don't like the Republican Party is me, because I resonate with them. I look like them. I live their experiences. I understand their challenges. And that is why it is important to put somebody like me to face off with Alan. And Republicans are playing a game here. They know Alan Fong is not somebody who they would otherwise put in power, because it is one of the most racist parties. It is a racist party. It is the party of Donald Trump right now. But they put him up so that they can pander, especially with people of color in the district. And that is the strategy they are trying to use. None of these people, the only reason, I agree with Seth that Alan needs to be beaten, but how? It is not the same person who can beat him, the same kind of people.
Ms. Fox, I'm going to ask you as well the question of President Biden leading the ticket, as well as the question, again, of the Republicans setting their sights on the district.
Thank you. I think if the president wants to run for re-election again and he's the nominee, then yes, I will support him. And I do think that we've seen him produce, him and the Congress produce tremendous results over the last year for the American people, supporting veterans, lowering prescription drug costs, climate, and trying to get our hands around the economy and moving the economy forward. I think the bottom line here is and I get asked this all the time, how can we just make Washington work? And I think if we want to make Washington work, we have to change the kind of people that we send there. And I think it is time to send someone that has deep experience in the community and understands both the policy and how to move things forward. And I have been part of a team that has beaten Alan Fung twice. I know we can do it again, and I'm pretty sure that he does too. And while someone around this table may have gotten the most votes in those elections, it's because we were fighting really hard to beat Alan Fung twice. So I'm ready for that challenge to do it again. And I think it's time that we change who we send. We change the makeup of this delegation and change who we're sending to Washington to keep the work happening that needs to happen on behalf of our communities.
Okay. Running down a little bit on time. It's amazing how time flies when you gather. An hour certainly seems like a long time, and then you gather like this. So we'll use a quick round, not that the word lightning round gets used. We'll use a quick round on a number of issues, and we'll try to go around the horn and quickly get everybody's opinion on the various issues of the day. I'll start with you, Ms. Fox. Speaker Pelosi, do you support her if elected?
I do. I think she's done a tremendous job.
Mr. Baugh.
Absolutely, yes.
Seth Magazine.
She passed the Affordable Care Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Sarah Morgenthau.
I support Speaker Pelosi, yes.
And what about David Segal? How about this?
Yeah, I don't agree with anybody on every single thing, but I think she's done a good job of managing a fractious caucus during difficult times.
Gotcha. Let's move on right now to issues of the day. Court hearing this afternoon at West Palm Beach involving former President Trump and the raid at Mar-a-Lago. What are your thoughts? Was this FBI overreach? A lot of Republicans suggest the FBI, not a lot, excuse me, let me take, some Republicans have said this. Some Republicans. Your thoughts on it? Was the FBI over the line with the search? Is the government taking it too far? What are your thoughts?
I don't think so. I think Merrick Garland is known for circumspection, and I don't think he is likely to have done this frivolously, and I think that they should take the case where it leads them and hold him to account.
The raid at Mar-a-Lago. Sarah Morgenthau.
Look, we all know that democracy has been on the line. We saw what happened on January 6th, and I am pleased that we've had the hearings, and I'm pleased that the Department of Justice has done opened up the investigation. I look forward to seeing the fruits of that investigation, and I think those who need to be held accountable should be, including former President Trump.
Mr. Magaziner, your thoughts on the FBI action?
For the sake of our democracy, no one can be above the law, not even a former president. And listen, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, so we have to see what comes out of this. But certainly bringing highly classified information to a hotel does not seem like something that a president of the United States should. He should know better than that.
Let me move, Mr. Bott. Your thoughts on that.
Absolutely, no one is above the law, and we should live by the rule of law.
And I'm going to go Joy Fox.
Absolutely not. The FBI was well within its rights, and anyone responsible for January 6th or stealing top secret documents should be held.
You have one
accountable.
more thought, very briefly, because
last thought. I have held top secret clearances in all my positions in the administrations in Washington. I know how serious it is. I know how carefully we handle classified information, and so this is an extremely important issue. I know a thing or two about.
I'll go back to Joy Fox. The issue: Supreme Court. Should we add seats to the Supreme Court very quickly?
I think we need to look at it. Yes.
Should we add? Should there be more?
It should be a wide range of issues: add seats, or potentially term limits, and even potential impeachment if possible.
Treasurer.
Yeah, I'm not sure that adding seats will solve anything, but I do think we should look at term limits.
Gotcha, Ms. Morgenthau.
I've said from the beginning that I do not think we should add seats. I think the Supreme Court process has become over-politicized, and that if we start to do it, the next administration will do it.
David Segal.
I think we should look at a suite of reforms, including potentially adding seats, term limits, more oversight of conflicts of interest, but in the end, it's going to come down to winning elections.
I'll stay with you. David, we'll continue on. If we're not giving any justice to this issue, the news of the day, student loans. Do you agree with what we're doing, $10,000 in loan forgiveness?
Yeah, I very much support. I think that it's one of many things we need to do in order to make the economy fairer, but this is impacting the lives of 40 million people for the better, and their families and their communities.
Sarah Morgenthau, your thoughts on the $10,000 forgiveness?
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely important. Education is the most important thing, and I am glad that the president has passed that, and I think it will be an important economic stimulus into our economy that we need.
Mr. Magaziner.
One of my highest priorities is going to be to make not just college, but also vocational training more affordable for everyone. On student loans, I think the most effective way to reform the system would be to focus on lowering the interest rates, because the federal government should not be making a profit off of people's loans.
Omar Ba, your thoughts?
In 2015, I was part of a team, a group that advocated for the RI promise, the current process that makes kids go to community college for 2 years for free. So I think this is great. It's a great investment. It is a great start. I wish it was more than that.
Joy Fox, your thoughts on student loan?
It is a great start, but we need to do more to make college affordable, like what Governor Raimondo did with the Rhode Island's Promise. I'm pleased that Pell Grants or students that are receiving Pell Grants will get extra help as well. And as a graduate of Rhode Island College, I think there isn't enough we can do to support our state schools and universities.
Last time around the table, personal. I'll start with you, Joy. Your hero. Who is your hero?
If you take it on the political side of things and the people that I've had.
One hero.
Former First Lady Rosalind Carter, caregiving and mental health. She was a champion for both.
Mr. Ba, who's your hero?
My mother, 8 children, 7 boys, 1 girl, grew up in a domestic violence situation, doing every kind of work, and survived that and gave them education, and she is forever my hero.
Mr. Magaziner, you're here.
My wife, Julia, she is strong and brilliant, and I am very lucky to get to be with her.
Ms. Morgenthau?
You know, my mother, who ran for this seat, I think about her often as I'm doing my own run. She was gutsy. She was an immigrant to this country. She was the first, along with her sister, to go to college. They came with a couple of suitcases through Austria, Switzerland, and then Cuba into Florida and New York, and she went on to run for this seat. And I admire her and think of her often, as I think so many who are tuned in, we think about our mothers.
David Segal, last word.
In the political realm, I would say Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who together, I think, have underscored the importance of ensuring the Democratic Party put measures in place that demonstrate concern for the needs of everyday people.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the closing statements. Winding down, we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to stay with you, former state representative, former city councilman David Segal. Again, 1 minute to your closing argument.
Thanks for having me. Thank you to the listeners. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about these issues, and again, the spots where we agree and also the spots where we disagree, some of which emerged here. But there are several. But as I said earlier, the question, the fundamental question that's at the core of this election is why it's so hard to make progress on the issues of the day, especially those places where there's agreement not just among Democrats, but also inclusive of independents and Republicans. And we all know the reason. We all know that it's because D.C. is plagued by the influence of corporate special interests and political corruption. And we need to fix that. And over the course of the last 20 years, that's the fight that I've devoted my life to at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level. And if we don't fix those systems, whatever our proposals might be in a room like this, it doesn't matter. They are not going to happen. So I want to go to Congress in order to fix those systems and elevate the voices of everyday people.
Let's have a closing argument from Sarah. Closing statement. Sarah Morgenthau. Again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. 3 things I'd like to say. I am the candidate who can best beat Alan Fung in November. That's what we need to stay focused on. We can't afford to lose this seat. We've heard today too much is at stake. I have the experience working for 2 presidents, and I'm ready to do the job on day 1. I worked at Homeland Security to keep our community safe, our country safe, from cyber attacks, from domestic terrorism, from natural disasters, which we know can hit hard here in the Ocean State. I reopened travel and tourism for the United States, which provides $7 billion into our economy. This is, a state of a little over 1 million people. That's a lot of jobs, a lot of economic benefits. And I have the global perspective from my time at the Peace Corps working in over 50 countries. We have the opportunity today to send a Democratic woman to Congress for the first time. I would be honored to serve in that role. We don't need another career politician. We need a fresh perspective, a mother's perspective. I have 3 children. I've balanced packing lunch boxes, school drop-offs, and the biggest national security issues. We're facing tough times. We need to stop the noise. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. I would be honored for those who are tuning in to get your vote on September 13th. Thank you.
Closing statement, General Treasurer Magaziner.
Everybody who is willing to work hard ought to be able to build a good life for themselves and a better life for their kids. That's the way it was for my grandparents. My grandfathers came home from the war. They didn't have a lot of money. They got jobs that were not glamorous jobs. But with those jobs, they were able to buy houses, put their kids through college, and build real middle-class lives. Today, a lot has changed. People are working harder and harder, and they're struggling to pay their bills. They're struggling to get ahead. So in Congress, I'm going to prioritize fighting for Rhode Islanders who are in the middle class and working their way into the middle class. We need to lower the cost of health care, protect Social Security and Medicare, bring more manufacturing and clean energy jobs back to Rhode Island. We need to protect fundamental rights, particularly a woman's right to choose, and we have to defend our democracy against Donald Trump and his followers. I am ready on day 1 to get things done because I've spent the last 8 years delivering for the people of the 2nd Congressional District as state treasurer. I am the only candidate in this race who has won district-wide before, and I'm ready to do it again in November. I ask everyone to join our campaign by going to SethMagaziner.com.
Joy Fox, closing argument. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. These are challenging times, and many people are struggling. And again, often I'm asked, how can we just make Washington work? If we want Washington to work, we have to change the kind of people we send there. We don't need more people with trust funds or people who can lend their campaigns hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've lived, worked, and made a difference here. My experience in government and running a small business gives me a strong and unique understanding of this district and the ability to get things done across education, housing, healthcare, and so much more. It is time to send the first Democratic woman to Congress, and I know we need to keep this seat blue. Again, I've been part of a team that has beaten Alan Fung twice. We can do it again, and I'm pretty sure he knows that too. So I ask for your vote on September 13th, and to remember, don't lose hope and send joy to Congress. Thank you.
Closing statement, Omar Ba. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. I think this election is about the establishment versus the grassroots and outsiders, and I'm the only outsider here. It's either career politicians or people who've been part of the system and have not made that significant change. This election should be about voice, having the opportunity to have a voice, to participate on issues that matter in our lives. And certainly we need diversity in representation. As a person who was not born here, who came here 15 years ago, I do not have the luxury for my campaign to be underwritten with almost $1 million to start a statewide campaign. Like Seth here, I do not also have the luxury of carpetbagging from Washington to a house that is not, we've never lived permanently. And we need that commitment whether this person, Sarah here, is going to stay here in the next, if she wins this election, or if she loses, is going to stay here. I don't have the luxury like my own children and joy to be born in a country that is the freest, that is the most democratic country. But what I have is perspective, a lived experience, and the certainty of standing up to people and defending democracy against people who try to destroy it.
Mr. Ba, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for joining us as well. General Treasurer Seth Magaziner, Omar Ba, Joy Fox, Sarah Morgenthau, and David Segal. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to Dan York for giving us an hour of his show this afternoon. We're hoping, again, our friend Bill Bartholomew is feeling a lot better and will certainly be back behind the microphone quickly. Our program director, Doug McGonigal, thanks for your hard work. Thanks for joining us, and good luck. Have a good afternoon.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.